Welcome to John Teaches Sean About His Brain, the podcast where I, Sean, embark on a journey to understand what's happening in my own head. Spoiler alert, I have no clue, but that's precisely why we're here. In each episode, I explore questions about the brain that I believe will resonate with all of us. Like, why can't I turn my brain off at 3 a.m.? Why my memory only works when it feels like it, and why my brain seems to betray me when I need it most. Listen, I'm not a scientist. I'm no expert. I'm just a guy looking to unravel the mysteries of my own mind. Fortunately, I happen to know a cognitive neuroscientist who is an expert in the brain, and I get to ask him all the questions I want. So, if you're curious, confused, or simply along for the ride, welcome. And hey, if you like what you hear, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to the podcast, or whatever it is you do wherever you listen to podcasts. I don't know how the algorithms work. I just know that your support keeps this journey moving forward. And together, we might just discover something remarkable. This is John Teaches Sean About His Brain. Let's get started. Hi, John. It's good to see you.
Sean, it's great seeing you today.
What is on your mind this week?
I had my daughter sent me an article last night, actually, that was really interesting to me. And it was a study about how amphetamines can change timing and your perception of timing. So it was research done with rats, and it was by Matthew Weber and his colleagues out of Iowa. And there's set it up a little bit. They're mazes that you have rats run down where there's treats in one arm of the maze, but not the other arm. And so there's a protocol where you can change which arm has the treat based on timing and time differences. So if a rat or mouse starts to run down an arm, like within the first 10 seconds that they come in, they might find the treat. But if it's been more than 10 seconds, that arm won't have the treat. The other arm will have the treat. So they can learn these timing differences, and they can learn them really well on like timing effects. I think we talked about this earlier too, about in conditioning that you can set up parameters where you make them wait for 20 seconds before, if they push a bar after 20 seconds,
Right.
They get a treat, but up to 20 seconds,
Yes.
doesn't matter. So they learn
Yeah.
just to wait for 20 seconds to press the bar. So this is another variation of that. It's going down two different arms. So they have to make a decision on this one. Which arm do I go down? And that's based on time. And when you give mice amphetamines, it messes up their timing. And so they were recording from neurons in the frontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex, right behind kind of the forehead of where ours is, right behind our eyebrows. And that part of the brain is known to process things like the passing of time. And so it messed up the mice ability to know which arm to go down. It messed up their decision making, which can have ramifications for ADHD and just a range of different things that we make medications for.
So you're saying it affects their perception of time. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, so just to explain it a little bit more, in the prefrontal cortex, there are neurons that fire in relation to different aspects of time as time passes. So, for example, after an event happens, they'll fire in a pattern that researchers believe that those cells are what are marking time so that we can kind of estimate how much time has passed. But they also change their behavior if you know that something's going to happen in a certain amount of time. So if you know that something's going to happen in 2.5 minutes, and I think we've talked about the example when we've talked about law enforcement and the timing, like in training, you have to be finished in a certain amount of time to move to the next thing. So then when officers get out on the street, there's that internal clock going, I got to wrap this up. I got to wrap this up. And I gave the
Mm-hmm.
example of the radio talk show guy who said, I can be out in the hallway during a break visiting and something in my head says it's time to go now. And they get in and sit down just as the red light comes on.
Yeah.
That type of timing, they're neurons that they call ramping up. So they start to their firing, and then their firing rate starts to increase up to the time when it's estimating that time's up. And some of them also ramp down. So there's groups of neurons that do different things, but those communicate with each other. And what these researchers found was it wasn't just, it seems like their time had shifted forward, so things were happening faster than what they anticipated, but also there was this disconnect between the communication of the neurons that were ramping up. So some were ramping up to like gauge that 20 seconds of when the arm's going to shift from A to B when I need to make my
Mm-hmm.
decision, but they weren't communicating either. So it was kind of it was mixed signals on a couple different fronts.
And that their hypothesis is that they're trying to disprove is that the amphetamines are what's interfering with the ability to do that very thing.
Yes. So they
And
also used as a control, they injected saline on some days, and it did not disrupt behavior. So it's still a needle in the forearm, but some was saline and some was amphetamines. So
so I've always thought of amphetamines because of the law enforcement aspect. That's street drugs, but
yeah,
as it would feel like that would speed things up. But um, I guess it's safe to say that it just affects, I want to say time, but I think I brought this up before. Maybe it was just in conversation, not on this podcast, but I've long struggled with, when I was in law enforcement, I was in charge of this particular training. It was really about de-escalation. It was about, and I'm putting in air quotes, trying to slow things down. But I struggled with that because in reality, I mean, my reality, it's not in reality. My way of looking at it was always time is a constant. So, there's so many minutes in an hour, so many seconds, there's so many hours in a day, and on and on and on. And those just happen. And so what you're doing doesn't really affect the hand on the clock moving, literally. But I'm getting a sense that this problem for me might be solved today because um, we're actually just talking about the perception of time. Correct?
so that's one aspect of it. But when they're running
Okay.
these experiments, that's more of what you're talking about, because that's the external time clock that the researchers are using to change back and forth. So the mice perception of time had been altered because of amphetamines.
Right, right. But okay, yep, I got now. It's 20 seconds that when that arm's going to move. So that is, I mean, couldn't we call that a constant? It's 20 seconds no matter what that it's going to move.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's not hardcore physicists listening to this podcast,
No,
they might
I'm
argue that
getting in trouble with
time is
physicists here.
relative. But
Okay,
we're
who's
stationary on Earth. We're not traveling at the speed of light or anything.
okay? Yeah, I've heard you said that time is relative.
Einstein said that.
Einstein, right?
I repeated what he said, and it's basically like the movies where you get on a spaceship and you travel in time. You've been traveling for an hour, but on Earth, like 60 years have gone by. Or the other way around, you've been traveling for 60 years, and on Earth, like an hour's gone by. That's the idea that time's relative, not constant.
Okay.
But here on
Okay, so I
Earth,
got to be careful not to upset physicists. I got to stop
yeah,
saying,
don't upset physicists.
yeah.
They understand things way better than me, so don't upset them. But on Earth, in a laboratory, it's more of a constant.
Okay. Okay. That's helpful for me.
Yeah, and I think that researchers, so there's it's not just ADHD. It's I think Parkinson's and schizophrenia. There's other disorders that amphetamines treat, but there's also the street drug aspect of it. And
Right.
so it's trying to figure out, if we're treating somebody for ADHD, what's that going to do if they decide to drive their car? Like, and this isn't new. Amphetamines are part of Adderall. Has the amphetamine salts in it. So a lot of this has been figured out, but it's still learning more about that to come up with new treatments and things like that. So if one of the areas of the brain that you don't want to affect is the frontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex, because that's decision making and executive function and those types of things. So it's a way to test if those are being affected with amphetamines. You can test it in mice, for example, which is what these researchers were doing.
Right. But so, okay, tying that you just brought something up is that, because I didn't realize that amphetamines, the street drug aside, methamphetamines or whatever it is, but amphetamines are prescribed for several, you said ADHD, say those,
I
a
think
couple
there's
of those again,
Parkinson's disease,
Parkinson's,
schizophrenia.
schizophrenia.
Mhm.
And so, if based on this research that you're talking about right now, if someone, let's say ADHD, has ADHD, they get prescribed Adderall, which has amphetamines in it, and so based on this research, it can, I just want to say mess with, but can it alter their perception of time?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, that's one thing that's easy to test in a mouse model, because you already
Hmm.
have the tracks that they can run, so you can test time. And so you're thinking, so here's the thing. Amphetamines work by releasing an excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. So your brain creates dopamine. You've heard of that, like the dopamine rush, or like if you're a risk
Hmm.
taker, it's the dopamine rush, like I'm chasing that dopamine, or doom scrolling is dopamine chasing. So the neurotransmitter dopamine, when you take an amphetamine, it releases extra dopamine, and then the brain cell that's released from, it will also there's like, I don't know, there's a dozen different ways or more that drugs affect the cells and the synapse and all of that all drugs have, certain different ways they affect the system. One of the ways is when a neuron releases at the synapse, releases a neurotransmitter, it can take that neurotransmitter back in, because they float out in this space for a little bit, and most of them float across to another neuron who absorbs them, and then that signal is carried on. But some of that is like it's reuptake. But with amphetamine, it creates more dopamine being released, but it also blocks the reuptake. So now that dopamine stays in the synaptic cleft longer. So other cells have more opportunities to use it. And that's what gives the excitatory behavior from it. But it doesn't, you don't take amphetamine and it only goes to the prefrontal cortex, it goes to every area of your brain. And so that's why Parkinson's disease, which is a movement disorder where people struggle to move, and you'll see sometimes Parkinson's people will fall, people with Parkinson's fall because they start to walk into another room and their body starts that lean, and then their feet won't move, so they just kind of lean and fall because it's really hard, the movement part. So if you take dopamine, that helps you move. Now you can move more smoothly because there's more, like L-Dopa is a drug of just to produce dopamine. Now there's more dopamine in those synaptic cleft areas for your muscle systems to take in. But that also means there's more there for your prefrontal cortex, and for,
Right.
it can lead to hallucinations and all kinds of other things. So drugs
Lucid.
affect
Yeah.
the entire brain, not just the area you're targeting.
Right, right. And as far as we are right now, like from a not technological, medical, but we can't target one specific area of the brain with a medication and then not affect the rest.
No.
That's your point. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
there's a fixed set of neurotransmitters as well, and they work in all over the brain. But
yeah,
methamphetamine on the street, I'm maybe you didn't want to go this direction, but and I don't know a lot about this type of stuff, but methamphetamine, that's a combination of, isn't it methane and amphetamine or something like that? It's a combination of drugs, so it's different than an amphetamine salt that's in Adderall.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so they
Most
aren't.
of the
That's not the
dangerous
same as a
properties
street
of
drug.
of methamphetamines are the way it's produced.
Yes.
So that I'm not going to share those, but I know the way to make it. But yeah, that's what makes it more dangerous in my estimation. My understanding is like the things that it takes to actually create that drug are horrible for the human body to ingest, especially
Yes.
over long periods of time. But
Especially the
back to
light
this,
blue color. Or was that just on Breaking Bad? The light blue?
that yeah, well, it started in Breaking Bad, but my understanding is they started using it, and it was,
Oh,
um, but going back to because um, it's really interesting to me to think about just not hyper focused and didn't mean to do that, but I just mean ADHD and all the things you listed. They're prescribed a medication for it, and that medication it can help with some of the symptoms of the disorder, but can affect the perception of time one way. And so when I keep saying perception of time, um, well, maybe we have to talk about that part. Maybe I need you. Let's start there.
yeah.
Let,
Let's do, because this fits in. This is what I love about the brain. There's rules, and those rules almost always apply. It doesn't matter what topic you're talking about. You've got if you learn some of the basic rules, they're going to be the same almost all the time. And one of the things we've talked about over and over, is how the brain um, constructs or builds a reality. It's not like when you see something, it's not the external world that's in your that comes in through your eyes and your ears or whatever. It's not like window panes and intercom systems. It's that physical energy is transduced into neural energy, and now your neural energy rebuilds your best idea and estimation of what's in the world. It constructs that, and time
well,
is
hang on. I
constructed in the same way.
really good. I was going to say I'm starting to kind of accept these rules for the five senses. Like the shirt that I'm wearing, the thread that made it is not blue. I'm still coming around. You got to
Oh,
bear with
good,
me.
good.
But in all sincerity, I was, but now I'm getting lost again because I understand neural energy hitting the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, all those things, the skin. But uh, for time, I just want to make sure that I'm not twisting what you just said, but the brain is also doing something similar with time.
Yes, it's constructing it. It's not measuring it in the sense that like a stopwatch. And so we talk about an internal clock, but it's not like what you were saying earlier. It's not fixed or constant. It's the brain creating its own internal clock. And so it's got neurons that our brains have neurons that fire to try to track time as it goes. So that's called prospective timing. You're trying to measure time as it passes in some way. And then retrospective timing is when you look back and say, man, that meeting seemed like it lasted an hour when it was like 8 minutes. But that's like the retrospective. So your system wasn't keeping track of time very well if it's off that much. But um, usually we're fairly good at that, at estimating time. But it's not perfect. It's not an actual clock inside our brain.
Because I'm sitting here and I am just scrolling through examples, so I have a few. Maybe they fit, maybe they don't. But on so many occasions, here's an example. Tell me if I'm even close to the
Okay.
mark here. What's going on? We're going to go on a trip, and it's not even a trip. I'm going to drive for 2 hours. So from here to Portland is about 2 hours, and I'm going to make the trip down and back in a day. And so we get in the car, and we drive for 2 hours, and it feels like um, getting there is taking forever. It's 107 miles. It's 2 hours, right? Give or take, depending on conditions, but it's 2 hours. We get there. We're there for 3 or 4 hours. We do what we were going to do. We get in the car, and the drive home seems like you blink we're there. And so that's the first thing that came to my mind. For some reason, no matter where we're driving, not just Portland, like we can be going anywhere. It feels like to me that one leg of the trip is always way longer than the other leg of the trip. And it's usually the drive home that goes really fast. Is it so? What does that spark in you? Anything like any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so that affirms that time is constructed. It's not a constant in our mind. It's constructed. That's why you can feel like going to Portland takes so much longer than coming home from Portland. And that's because you're kind of meshed in with keeping track of time with these neurons that are kind of recording time as you go. Are, your attention can affect your perception of time, your emotions can affect your perception of time, your memory can. So if you like, when you first start driving a route, it seems like a 2 hour drive seems like a lot longer, but
Yeah.
after you've driven it a few times, you have landmarks. And now all of a sudden, it seems like that trip's going a lot faster because your expectations are, here comes this landmark, that landmark, boom, I'm there. And so that can change it. If you are dreading getting something like getting to work can seem like it takes, let's see, no, yeah, I think getting to work can seem like it takes longer than getting home sometimes because you're thinking about everything you're gonna have to do at work, and it stretches that out. And then getting home, you're looking forward to the evening or the weekend, and it seems like it can go faster. Sometimes that can drag. If you're waiting for a weekend, it seems like from Wednesday to Friday takes longer than it did from Monday to Wednesday. So
So I want to
there's
go
just
back if we
differences.
can. I don't
Mhm.
want you to leave those three because you just said something that, that's what we do on this podcast. You say something and it sparks this thing. But I have a horrible habit of getting off track. So I want to stay, I want you to just put a pin in this, but attention, emotions, and memory and their effect on this thing you're talking about. But I had another, and this is where I start to take us off the track. But like the adage or the saying that everybody has heard or said, I think, but time flies when you're having fun, right? And so when you're doing something and it seems like you're having fun, you're enjoying it, all of that. This podcast, we've said it almost every time. I look up, I blink, and we're at an hour. But there's other times where it's something that maybe I'm not enjoying as much, or that even I'm dreading, and it seems to go on for double the time. So that was another of the examples I had. I think you just addressed it, but
Yeah, was one of the I can't remember which comedian said this. Might have been Rodney Dangerfield. I can't remember, but said, I've been married. It feels like only 5 minutes underwater. So that's it's kind of the situation you're in determines
mhm.
whether that seems like a long time or a short time. But but yeah, time flies when you're having fun. That's an example of it because your attentional system is engaged in what you're doing. You're enjoying what you're doing. There's not that kind of counting time off like when is this going to end. It's you're really into that moment, and that, by the way, is referred to as specious time or the specious present.
Hmm.
It's it's a word. So I try not to use I try to use synonyms when I can because part of science sometimes that makes it unapproachable is the terminology because it's so different from our normal conversational language that it's like, oh, you're trying to sound smarter. Oh, that's really smart. I could never learn that. But this is one of those words I don't know what a synonym for
Another
it is.
an
Yeah.
easier way to describe. Well, what does that mean, though?
So the specious present is just talking about your awareness of this moment. So it's kind of the goal of like mindfulness to be in just this moment where you're consciously aware of right now. And it looks maybe just briefly into the past, like I've been here, but you're not thinking like how long. It's just like I know I've been here. I'm here now, and I know I'm going to be. So it peaks just a little bit into the future and a little bit into the past, but it's this present moment, and that's thought of as the specious present.
Okay, okay. So we're back to like now. I'm going to bring us back to what you mentioned. So attention. You just kind of touched on it there, but how does attention then affect my perception of time?
Well, it's like your attention affecting your perception of what's going on around you. If you're daydreaming, you're not aware of what's happening around you, so you'll miss things. If you're not paying attention, if you're paying attention to time, then you're aware of every second ticking off. If you're not really attending to that, your attention is caught up in something else, you lose track of the seconds ticking off, so to speak. So now time flies.
Well, that's why there are no clocks in Vegas casinos.
And that is also true. There's no
I
windows or
was
clocks.
just no windows, no clocks. You don't know when you're in there. And if you've been in there for, and anybody who's been to Vegas knows what I'm describing, but you could be sitting at a gaming table or at a slot machine and kind of go, without looking at your phone or your watch, you have no idea if it's 1 PM or 1 AM.
Yeah,
Just,
no, that's true.
just
We lived in
completely lose
Reno.
track of time.
We lived in Reno for about a decade. And when we first moved there from a little town in Kansas, uh, our kids, I don't remember which kid it was, made friends at school, and they had a birthday party, and it was in a basement of a casino. And I'm saying basement is because below they had like a big kids area. There's all kinds of games and stuff. And it was
Mm-hmm.
at the MGM. So it was just this huge casino, and you had to walk in the front doors and then walk around all the, the casino stuff to go downstairs. And my kids had obviously never been in a casino yet. They grew up in Kansas, and they were only like, Sierra was 5, Jonas was 4, and Oren was 2. And so we took all of them to go to the birthday party, and they were all invited. And I just remember Jonas walking in. He was 4. And when we walked in the doors, there's all these slot machines, bells ringing, lights flashing, people everywhere. And he said, "Wow, this is a big birthday party." Like, no, this is just a casino, Jonas.
Yep. Yeah.
The birthday party's down. It looks like a big party. But yeah,
And
you
it
lose
feels like
track
one a
of
lot of the
time.
times, but
Yeah.
yeah, and that's just because you're not paying attention necessarily to time,
Yeah,
how
you're
much
not
time has
tracking
passed.
it.
Like,
You're not tracking it.
yeah.
Yeah. Your mind isn't. Your attention is drawn somewhere else, at the tables or the slot machines or whatever.
Hmm. So then I'm okay. I think I get attention. This is making sense to me, and I think, but I don't want to get cocky here. I think emotions are making sense, but I want to make sure because I think that you said this, but if I'm dreading something or
Hmm.
looking forward to something, like emotionally, then time can seem like speed up or slow down based on how I feel about a situation.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yep. So if you're also, while you're involved in something, if it's really like a trip to the dentist's office and you're getting your teeth worked on, it seems like, you could swear it's been 45 minutes. And when you get out and finally look back at your watch, it was like 6 minutes. And it's like, oh, that
Hmm.
felt like forever, because your emotions are involved in that too. And you don't want to be there. And this is not fun, type thing.
Yeah. So it feels like longer than it actually is in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. Generally. And then, emotions, attention, we were talking about attention like at Vegas, but those are emotions as well.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yes, I
enjoying
see that
that,
too.
and
Hmm.
yeah,
Uh,
so it's both of those.
and then memory. I'm going to take a stab at this, but when I'm trying to recall an event, depending on the attention, the emotions in that it was going on in that moment, I can look back and go, yeah, we were there for like 4 hours. It's like, no, you were there for just over an hour.
Yeah, and also remember, the other thing with memory is that whatever your emotions are right now can also influence your perception of how long that took, because
Yeah.
it's a memory again, so it's malleable, and you're recalling that, and that's retrospective timing, and that can be influenced by your current mood as well, but definitely by the mood and the context of when it happened.
This is where I'm going to really muddy things up, unfortunately. But I'm the different, the function and processes of the on channel and the back channel.
Mm-hmm.
This feels to me like a back channel function. Is that accurate?
Yes, of trying to keep track of time and building a
Yes.
perception of time. Yes, that is a
Yes.
that's a back channel, which is your non-conscious brain. It's the part of the brain that's building your perception of time is the part that you're not consciously aware of. That's the back
That's
channel.
what I was trying to get to.
Yep.
So that's a correct statement on my part then. This is a function of the non-conscious part of the brain.
And yes, when you're talking about your perception being built, but if you're talking about the specious present, which again, like Casey, my wife Casey, she's
Mm-hmm.
very visual, and when she hears a new word, she always says, "Can you spell it?" Because then I get it and I understand it. So in case listeners are like that, it's Specious, specious. So it's the specious present, and it's this sliding window that as time's moving on, that window is slowly sliding with it, and that's your conscious awareness. That's the on channel. So it's really timing in the on channel. The back channel is creating it, but your on channel awareness of it in the moment is what specious timing is. Otherwise, your on channel becomes aware of what you think is going to happen in the future or what you're remembering has happened in the past.
Right. That's where I thought I might muddy it. It seems so there's involvement from both systems in this process. There's specious timing, what's going on right here, right now. But then also there's, did you say, I mean, am I predicting a little bit into the future and recalling a little bit of the past? Of
Yeah,
what just occurred and what might occur?
yeah, in that window, in that
Yeah.
spacious present window, there's a little bit of the past and a little bit of the future kind of tied into this moment in time. It's not just this is where it gets difficult because you have moments. Who was it? The philosopher, was it Zeno or something like that, was talking about shooting an arrow at a target, and at any point you can say that it moves half the distance to the target, and now it's at this point, and then you can say it moves half the distance, and if you're trying to calculate it that way, it will never hit the target because there's always a half a distance more. And so it gets really hard to think because your brain is building these perceptions, these moments. It's like capturing moment after moment after moment, but it stitches those together into our feeling that time is moving. We're moving with time, and that's what this moving window is. And I think the reason this is important for us to talk about is because this is a way that a lot of people in neuroscience look at consciousness. I mean, consciousness is a really difficult topic to discuss because there's no definition for it yet. And anytime you develop a definition, then you have to say, well, how does that apply to other non-human animals as well, for example? And a lot of people use consciousness as a dividing line between humans and non-humans. So now that makes it even harder to identify, because the minute you identify it, then researchers are going to go out and test that theory on non-human animals and go, oh, they can do this too. So
Rats have a sense of time.
time. Exactly. And so this is, but still, we don't know I don't even know what your conscious awareness is like. I mean, I have an idea, but
Neither do I.
yeah. I know other people's, but not you, Sean. No. That's
Fair. That's fair.
that's the thing about consciousness. We can guess what it's like for other people, but we only have our own experience. And so that gets even more difficult when you look at non-human animals. I don't know what a rat's consciousness is like. I don't know what my dog's consciousness is like.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So so the brain is building this representation of the outside world specific to time. And
Yes.
and so let me just finish the thought I kind of started with when I was still teaching this program for law enforcement. What we were talking about is like in law enforcement, if an officer, let's just say just keep it really simple. There's a person with a knife. You're on the call. You show up and pull up right to the person with the knife and jump out of your car. So now you're 6 feet away from the person with the knife. And so you have just compressed the amount of time that you have to make decisions, to read body language, understand and comprehend the situation. All that stuff is like, it's going to happen really fast. As opposed to you park your car, 20 feet away from the person, you park it in a way that you can use your car as cover. don't need to go into the details, but it's on the other side of that. It seems like you have more time, right? This person has to cover that. If they were going to run at you, they have a lot farther to go. You can. So that's what I always struggled with. This is starting to help me because what we're talking about is changing the perception of time. How much time I would have to make that decision, right? And not actually changing the construct of time. 30 seconds is 30 seconds in that moment, but the way that someone might perceive those 30 seconds is different.
Yeah, based on the context you're saying as well. And I think that distance from, in the example you're giving, that distance does give you more time to make a decision, because like you said, they have to, if they're going to try to attack you with a knife as a police officer, if they're going to attack you, it takes them longer to cover 20 feet than it does 6 feet. So that gives you extra time to make a decision. It doesn't change the time itself. It just gives you more. They're just further away, so you see them coming for longer.
Yeah. And, okay. So, yeah, that makes sense. But now another question, because as I'm thinking about what I keep calling the construct of time, but I mean, humans created what we're using right now, saying a day is 24 hours, an hour is 60 minutes, all those things. And then as a baby, when I start to learn about the world and that how to tell time, and that my back channel starts to learn because I've been told enough, there's enough repetition. I know what an hour is. I know what a second is. I know all these things, but I wasn't, and maybe I just almost made a bad statement, but I wasn't born knowing what those things are. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's
So
accurate.
then how does the brain measure time? It's part of what we're learned. I mean, we learned it, but
Yeah, what we so the brain. So let's say that we go back before humans had created the years, months, hours, seconds, all of
perfect.
that.
Yeah.
So at that point, the brain still had neurons, or we're presuming still had neurons that marked
Hmm.
time like they do now, like with ramping up, ramping down. It's just there were not labels for that. So we put humans, because of language gives us the ability to label things so that we can communicate better. So now we can label things about how many hours is in a day. We can break things down. You can break it down in different ways. It doesn't have to be with 24 hours. You could think of other ways to break it down. And if you learn what those labels mean, it would be the same thing, but none of that changes how your brain is operating.
Right. That's my point. So when your brain is processing this idea of time, maybe that's what I need is let's get a little bit deeper. I know you like to keep things as surface level as possible, but I need a little bit more science talk
Yeah,
here
okay.
for.
Let's
So
do
when
it.
we're talking about processing of time, how does the brain actually do that?
So, again, our best knowledge right now is that there are cells in the prefrontal cortex that develop firing patterns and rhythms based on, after an event, they'll set a certain rhythm that we presume is tracking time in some way. But then we also know that if you are doing something that always takes a certain amount of time, that then those same neurons will start ramping up their firing as you get closer to the end of that time. So remember when I gave you the example of a friend of mine, Dave Bloxage, over in the UK, that was with diplomatic protection, and they would have to stand guard an hour at a time. And he said
Mm-hmm.
he had done that so many times that he would think in his mind, it's been 47 minutes. And he would look at his watch and it had been 47 minutes. It's that
Mm-hmm.
he's set that hour. He's done it so many times that his brain, the cells in the prefrontal cortex, those neurons have, some of them ramp up as you get closer to that hour and some ramp down as you get closer to the hour, but those communicate with each other in a way that your brain knows about how much time you have left. And it's why that radio personality knows when their break is
No.
over.
Yeah.
You've trained your brain that these are the segments of time, and we label that as an hour or 2.5 minutes, but
Right.
that's a segment that's consistent over and over and over and over again, multiple times in a day, multiple days a week, and your brain figures out that pattern, and those neurons are really just firing to that pattern.
And so even like without labeling something an hour,
Mm-hmm.
it's still you're teaching your back channel something by doing the same thing. In this case, showing up, standing there for a certain amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and then your brain just goes, okay, we've done this enough. I know. And then so you're saying now to add to that, towards the end of that thing, whatever the thing is, the neurons start firing when we're getting close to that mark.
Mm-hmm. They ramp up towards like when that mark is coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like if you're on an island where there are no clocks and there's no labels, but you have around on the other side of the island the people that are there with you. They there's a certain sound when their boat leaves its dock to come around the island to where you're at, and it happens every day, and that sound happens, and then eventually you see the nose of the boat kind of sticking out around the cliff, and then it comes towards you. After not much time, that pattern gets locked in, and your cells will start ramping up. After that crash, they'll start their pattern, and then they'll start ramping and then when to expect the nose of that boat to come around the cliff. And that's without a set time, as far as we say it's 1 hour, 12 minutes or whatever,
Right.
or 23
Right.
minutes. Those are those are patterns your back channel picks up. It's a pattern making and pattern identifying machine. It
Yep.
loves trying to find patterns in things.
So every day at 11 o'clock, the horn goes off and the ship comes around and it takes 12 minutes and I see the nose. And then that happens enough, even though I don't know it's 11 o'clock, that means nothing to me. My brain just knows there's the horn. And in what I would call 12 minutes, but your brain just knows goes now. And you look
Mm-hmm.
and there's the nose coming around.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to kind of illustrate, you take the labels away and the same thing's still happening.
And maybe sometimes the horn sounds at 10:30, but it's still 12 minutes and the nose comes around. So as soon as you hear the horn, 12
I
minutes, you see the
know
ship.
12 minutes, even though I don't know it's 12 minutes. I know my brain goes now and
Yeah.
it's coming
And so
around.
we've labeled that by hours, minutes, seconds, days. We have
Hmm.
those labels now. But yeah, it's just a pattern that your brain picks up, and it's all constructed in your mind.
But there's smaller measures of time that we don't use as often. I
Yeah.
mean, than
Yeah.
seconds,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
What are
the
some of
brain
those?
uses those.
That's what I'm trying to get to. Yeah.
Yeah. So the brain will use. Well, let's kind of go backwards. There's what's called the default mode network in the brain, which is also it's just kind of an overall global functioning of the brain that sets, I don't know, like mood and overall feelings, and it's also thought to be tied to consciousness, and it's tied into to the basal ganglia. Since we're going a little bit deeper, we can talk about brain structures. The
I asked for
striatum,
this.
you ask
I
for it.
asked for it. Yep.
The striatum is in the basal ganglion. It tracks time. The prefrontal cortex tracks time. The ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex, tracks
Yeah.
time.
The error detector.
The error detector also is looking at
I
time.
remember that. I remember
Yeah,
that.
that's awesome. So all these brain areas process time. The default mode network runs on seconds to tens of seconds because it's more of a mood shift over time. But then when you're talking about individual neurons or networks of neurons, those work on a millisecond basis. So that's if you break a second down into 1,000 pieces, it's 1/1000th of a second, and that's kind of the area that they're working in, is those milliseconds.
1/1000th of a second.
So our perceptions those neurons that are sending their signals to other neurons to build this perception, or our motor processes that get us to move or push a button or whatever, or walk, those are on milliseconds. They're sending signals kind of on the millisecond scale, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, and then inside of cells, or as a part of cells, as a part of neurons, there are like ion gates, like on the axon, that allow chemicals to go in and out. That's what creates the electrical charge. So there's positive
Okay.
and negative ions, and they move in and out of the cell, but there's gates that block those. And so gates open and close. Now it's even faster. They move even faster in that so that the signal can travel. They're opening and shutting in the microsecond range. And then you've
What's
heard
a microsecond?
a microsecond is 1/10,000th of a second, right?
Okay.
I believe it is.
Okay.
And then 1/100th of a thousandth seconds is a nanosecond. So you know computers run on nanoseconds.
I've heard that term, nanosecond. Yeah.
So a lot of molecular interactions within cells, within I keep saying in cell, that's different than
Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah.
talking
Could
about,
you not keep
within
repeating
neurons.
incel? Homeland Security's knocking at my door already.
some of the some of the things that happen in a neuron at that level
Mm-hmm.
is like the molecular interactions on how molecules are binding and things like
It's
that.
so
That's on the
fast that like that's,
nanosecond. It's
we,
crazy.
yeah, that's okay. That's what I'm trying to get to here, is to try to get some framework for the, how fast these things are happening. I imagine at some of these levels, there's, I don't even know the right way to describe how fast that is,
Yeah,
but
there's no way to imagine it really. And then it goes even faster. The picoseconds are like
never
millions.
heard
Yeah.
that.
So that's,
Picosecond?
yeah, that's like proteins folding, or light, how light gets the opsin is absorbed and things like that, because light travels so fast. So now you're on the picosecond. So
Huh.
timing, we only know about these things because of our time system, and then because of the equipment that we have developed that allows us to measure things at these levels. So it takes equipment. Obviously, you can't see things happening that quickly. So that's also something we should talk about. Your what your like your conscious stream of information is takes just a little bit more than 40 milliseconds, right? 4/10 of a second. What? No, a little bit more than 20 milliseconds. So what's the refresh rate on a television? Is it 18 hertz
Oh,
or something? It flashes every 18 milliseconds or something like that.
yeah, that
And
sounds
it's
close. Yeah.
so it's just a series of pictures that are spread apart by like 18 milliseconds, and we see it as smooth motion because we can't process things quicker. But if you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about things that if you're talking about biological material that processes things faster than that, then it sees these as chunks of like still pictures of information. So some parts of our brain will see our television show as just still pictures one after another, like the back channel can see that. But our on channel
Really?
conscious awareness is this just flowing through.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh,
think I told you
wow.
about the pictures, that how they test the difference in on channel and back channel. If you
Yes.
show a picture and within 30 milliseconds replace it with a different, like if you show a negative picture, like a dangerous picture, like a man with a knife pointed at somebody, uh, and then you replace it with seashore and a
Canoe on a
tree and
lake with
a
a
canoe on a
sun,
lake,
sure,
then
sure.
what you see is the canoe on the lake. But your
Right.
back channel saw the threat, and so your pupils dilate a little bit. You start to get sweaty because it sees all of those little chunks going along, and our conscious awareness can't process that quickly.
Okay. I thank you for that callback. I remember you describing that, but now when we're talking about time and how fast these things, because you were saying you would show the danger picture for less than a frame rate, for
Hmm.
less than
Well, for
just
one frame rate,
right, or
and
for,
then
you show them for one frame rate.
one frame rate, and then replace
Yes.
it, because that's a frame rate can't be processed by itself because the next one starts to overlay it. That's why you see motion.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
one frame rate is the dangerous picture, and then it's replaced, and the happy, calm picture stays on for 2 or 3 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what you remember seeing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But your back channel, and you can prove that through the body's reaction, fight, flight,
Physiological responses.
freeze.
Yep.
Yeah, you start to get all those reactions, even though your on channel is like, I see a boat, I see all these calm pictures,
Yeah. And
or
if you
your on channel is just processing the calm stuff.
exactly, and if you put a lot of the danger pictures together, like back to back, meaning a danger picture covered up with a calm picture, and then a danger picture covered up with a calm. If you do that multiple times in a row, people start to get really kind of almost agitated. They shift in their seat a lot. And sometimes they'll say, "Can I take a break?" And then when you say why, and you know why, because I just showed
Yeah,
8 of them in a row, you say, "Why do you need a break?" I don't know. I don't know. My back's hurt. Maybe I've been sitting too long, or I don't know. I just feel like I need to do something. Maybe I need to go to the bathroom, or yeah, they come up with
yeah.
something because
Your
the
on
on channel
channel will
doesn't
look
know.
for a reason
Yeah.
to explain the impulse or the drive to get out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your back channel's going, this is a dangerous place.
Yeah, man. Okay, so I'm not going to remember the seconds that you said, but from super fast
Pico.
up to picosecond, nanosecond, all those things are happening at that rate. Um, but I'm still measuring. So I already brought this up, but I'm thinking about um, putting everything you said together. And then when I try to remember an event,
Mm-hmm.
recall timing, so to speak. Um, how much time has passed after an event. So I already mentioned how much time I was actually at the event based on my emotion, attention, some of the other things. But then to go, this happened yesterday, this happened a week ago, this happened a month, do you know what I'm getting at? Kind of,
Yeah. It's kind of in a sense, it's the temporal ordering of events. And usually think about that in an event, like when did so and so arrive at the party, and when did this other person arrive at the party, and when did the guy stand on the table and fall down? Were they there yet or not? So you're trying to sort all of that out, but it kind of stretches out. I have a real problem with this in knowing when something like I can remember something, and then
mm-hmm.
I say, when did that happen? Because to me, I don't know if it was 3 months ago or 3 years ago, and that sounds like a big
That's what
range, but yeah. So
yes.
Casey's better than at that than I am, and I'll say that was like 3 months ago, and she'll say that was a year and a half. I'll say no, that couldn't have been, and then we'll figure out and look it away, and it's been like a year and a half. Or I'll say, and so for a while I was marking things by the start of COVID, because there was
Mm.
pre-COVID, we were out doing whatever we wanted, and then at COVID we were locked up, and so it seems like that moment of almost like incarceration from that point. I was sentenced to 2 years, and then my after 2 years when I got out, but I don't know, that's getting further and further in the distance, so that's not working for me as well anymore.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
struggle
My
with that.
wife, the same way. Andrea is amazing at that. I say, hey, but this thing. And she's like, yeah, that was 2 years ago. I go, no, that was like 6 months ago.
I
She goes, huh?
know.
And she can lay out like, no, that was 2 years ago. I'm like, so I don't know what is going on as usual in my brain where I can't just because it seems to me in those moments, she just can tell me right then without a lot of thought, how long it's been or how long. And I'm just like, no, I don't know. I would have to break out like all these instruments to try to figure out. And so we just had a party recently, and I'm thinking about the order of arrival because it was just 2 days ago,
Okay.
and
You can't remember
I'm
who got there
falling back
when?
on nope. My point to that is I bet you she could, with
Yeah.
a little bit of an error rate, she could probably tell you in the order of when people showed up.
And maybe the spacing between when they showed
I
up.
would be willing to bet on that. And I'm
You,
sitting here going, I couldn't tell you who showed up when.
can you remember who all was there?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so that part of your memory, you can say these people were there. It's just the timing, the temporal order.
correct.
Who came
But I'm
when? Who was
falling
first,
back
second,
on
third?
I'm realizing and I'm falling back on schemas because I can tell you that we have one friend who's notoriously early to everything. She's there. If she's not there, the party started at 6. If she's not there at 6, like we're going, is she okay?
Well, yeah, we better check on her.
So I'm assuming she got there first because she gets there 10 minutes early. And then there's another friend who's notoriously late. So I can start to use my schema to kind of like, but I don't know that that would be accurate, right? I mean,
Uh,
it's my best
so most of
guess.
the time it would be, but for
Yeah,
one individual point in time, it probably
yeah,
is not going to
no,
be that
I
accurate.
can't rely on that.
Yeah.
So I've been all over the board, but is anything else you can think about that would help me with this, getting me to understand the threads in this shirt reflect light differently, but in relation to time and
Hmm.
my perception of it?
Yeah, I don't know other than like I can just kind of talk a little bit about my favorite part of time is specious present, and not just because it's fun
Oh,
to say, but
oh,
it's
okay. Because I was going to say, is that just because you like saying that? What about it? What about it is interesting to you?
I think it's that the whole the whole idea of consciousness itself, because there's different levels of consciousness. We always talk about it as on channel, back channel, but if you start breaking it down, the on channel has multiple levels, and so that's why consciousness is so hard. There's multiple levels to it, and you can be conscious without having specious presence, because that's a higher level of conscious awareness. And so I kind of like that as a divider, and it's an easier way for me to think about it is using time. So that's why I like it related to time, because now I
Yeah,
can think about moments and a little bit past, a little bit forward, and it's just this window that's moving with me as I move through time. And then my on channel, my inner voice, my the great storyteller in your mind is piecing it all together and talking about it as you go, and is creating this story that unfolds over time that allows you to remember things, and it guides your attention to what you're paying attention to, and all of that's kind of locked into that, just that those few brief moments that are tied together and sliding as you move through life. And that's really fascinating to me because the timing aspect allows me to grasp a hold of it and understand it better.
yeah. I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard it from different sources about Bruce Lee. That and if I screw, I do not want to be disrespectful to Bruce, but that he would take hours to eat an orange, and because he would sit down in the grass and think about, and again, I don't know if this is true, and I might be butchering this, but I think about this story often because I try to be mindful and I try to practice mindfulness a lot. I am nowhere near what this story is going to, the way I'm going to tell the story, but that he would think about the orange as he was peeling it. He was, would think about where it came from. So the grocery store that he bought it from, the people that work at the grocery store, and I'm speeding this up for time here, pun intended, but the truck driver that delivered the oranges to the store, the grove that the orange was grown in. Like, he would think about all of those things in that moment while he was eating this orange, and take a slice of and bite of an orange, and think about the ground that it was grown in, like that level of mindfulness just about eating this piece of fruit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But and so when you're talking about being in the moment and thinking about, and I'm thinking about the way it tastes, the way it feels, I don't know that I have time in my life or the ability to be that mindful, but to think about the interconnectivity of the universe and where this orange came from. And I mean, like I said, I aspire to it. I'll never get there, but I'm trying.
Yeah, and
Trying.
I don't think you can do that all the time. I mean,
I
that's
can't.
also mentally draining and exhausting, because your on channel needs rest as well. And so So if you grab, like, if you're talking to somebody and it's over lunch and there's some oranges there and you're right in the middle of a conversation, you're popping them in your mouth, you still are aware at some level that you're eating an orange, but you're not aware at like the Bruce Lee level that you're eating an orange,
Right.
where that's going to even affect the taste of it and the texture and the experience of it. So that level of awareness is, some people will say, well, that's awareness, but it's not true. It's not the heightened sense of awareness you get from mindfulness. It's kind of like the
Mm.
idea of flow. Flow, you're aware at some level, like in a basketball game, because you and I both play basketball. So in a game, you're aware that at some level, kind of what's going on, but then there
Hmm.
can be those moments where you really lock in and become really like hyper mindful of what's happening there. That's a different level than just being in the flow of the game as it's happening. So some people will say that's kind of a division of human, non-human. Like maybe our dogs are aware of more of the flow thing, but not aware of, like, you don't stop every minute and say, I'm a part of this game. I'm in
Right.
this game right now. I can affect this, because if you do that, you're going to screw everything up and your teammates are going to yell at you. Like, you got to keep moving in the flow and things are happening fast. And you're kind of on automatic, on autopilot at that point.
Hmm.
And so maybe
Yeah.
you're still aware at some level, but it's autopilot. You're not stopping to think and make choices and realize that you can make choices and influence this. You're just playing in the flow. And maybe that's similar to consciousness in non-humans, that it's kind of that flow. They're aware, but they don't have that really strong mindful awareness that, wait, this is me and I can do something different, or I can influence this. So that
We're
specious time gives you that
Specious.
feeling.
And I was just going to say, we're coming to the end of the podcast. As usual, time flew, but you brought up basketball. And I think there's some sports psychologists that would actually say if you think about it too much, you're going to screw it up. If you're
Absolutely.
aware of, like, if you're thinking about, I'm going to dribble the ball on a free throw, for example, I'm going to dribble 3 times. I'm going to hold it here. I'm going to hold the laces like this. I'm going to, elbow at if you think about all of that, you're more prone to screw it up.
Hmm.
That's the point of flow, right? Is just go, I
Yeah,
practice this a million times. I'm not even thinking about this. I'm just going to do my thing.
yeah. If I start thinking which foot goes in front of the next, or if I start thinking, if I screw this up, it's going to be bad. Any of those
Hmm.
things, you're
You're going to screw
yeah,
it up.
you're going to.
And that's how I'll give, if anybody who plays basketball is listening, if you want to screw up a really good free throw shooter, just walk by him and say, that new shot you have looks really good. And then,
So
they'll
you
just
were
be
a
like,
trash talker.
I wasn't. If I would have known then what I know now, just like so many other things, I would have been a good trash talker. But I wasn't, because not good at it. But again, making them think about, what, my new shot? What are you talking about?
Yeah,
And then you got
that's
to
not a
think
new
about,
shot.
gotcha,
Don't
you're
I
going to
always
miss.
turn my elbow? So
You're going
then
to
you
miss.
can trash talk the other way. You probably heard about Larry Bird, was
Oh, notorious trash talker.
notorious trash talker, but
Yes.
I can't remember who it was. It was another really well-known basketball player back in the day, and it was in I think one of the finals. Uh, Celtics had the ball and called a timeout, and when they came out of the timeout, the guy that was guarding Larry Bird, he walked up to him and said, "I'm going to stand over there. I'm going to come off a pick and catch the ball right over here and shoot it." And then the person was like, "Wait, is he messing with me?
Why
He
would
wouldn't
you? Why
actually
would you
tell
tell me
me,
that?
would he? What?" And
Yeah.
so he got set up, and he thought, "I'm not going to fall for that." And he set up in the place, ran the pick, caught it right where he said he was going to, and shot it and made it. He said that was
Yeah.
like the ultimate. Like, I was at that point, I was like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to guard this guy.
But think about just that, going back to what I said, and then add this, is like, that guy's spent thinking, like, what, he wouldn't tell me what he's about to do. The game's on the line. Or maybe that's what he
Surely he
wants me
wouldn't.
to think.
Yeah,
Maybe that's what he wants me to think. So he did tell the truth, but he thinks I'm going to think he's lying. And then the ball's going in the air, and
yeah.
you're
While
like,
you're
oh
thinking
no,
all of that, the whistle blows
yeah,
and
the game's over.
game
Yeah,
over.
that's amazing. I love that story. I love that. All right. Well, John, I'm saying it again. Time flew, but I've
Time
taken up
flies.
over an hour of your day here. But all kidding aside, like, you've added now, I was feeling good about vision, hearing, my other senses. And I'm starting to get comfortable with this idea of time and how my brain is processing it. So thank you for that.
Just remember, your brain always creates stuff. So almost anything we talk about is going to be created. And then if there's ever a time where you think, man, this podcast is really dragging and going slow, we should probably just dump that episode and start on a new one. So as long as we think time's flying, that's
Means I'm having
that's a better
fun.
way. Yeah, me too.
And I am still having fun, still having a lot of
Good.
fun. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And for our listener out there, see how I try to just be, but if you are enjoying this, wherever you're listening to it, as always, I just ask that you like, follow, subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment. We're on socials. I'm trying to be active. John's still killing on TikTok, so check out his TikTok. The show has a TikTok at Sean Teaches John. You can find us on X, on Blue Sky. Our website, if you haven't checked out the website, johnteachessean.com is the website. And yeah, it's my plea every week to keep this going because I'm having so much fun that I want to keep doing this. And I don't see an end in sight, but we may hit a point where it's just John and I and the one listener, and we might have to call this thing good. So yeah, so if you can tell a friend, tell a loved one, tell a coworker, tell anybody you think would be interested, and yeah, if you have a question, hit us up on the socials, hit us up on the website, anywhere. If you have something you want John to answer, we'd love to discuss one of your questions. We might not take a whole episode for it, but I'd love to get it on the show. So until next week, again, John, thank you. And thank you, everybody listening.